Hello and welcome to another episode of Best of 3. We're starting a little bit early, but that's because Dominic SonicFox McLean has made a point to come out and talk to us.
Doing everything for the kids these days.
Dude, you know what? We just got to make it happen, right? I'm a friend, your host. This is Mike Donka Schiller. Remember that name. And later in the show, we will have SonicFox. He's coming up soon. Then we'll be talking to John Choi of NCR fame, and he'll be hosting next week's premiere tournament. And then, of course, we're going to have our illustrious panel of John Velociraptor Guerrero and Steve Ace King Offsuit Jurek to talk about all things Final Round. You have a couple of things to say, don't you?
About Final Round? Oh, yeah, certainly.
But first, let's get started with a little bit of that SonicFox. Hey, man, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
How's it going, man? Thank you so much for taking the time. I know that basically you've been traveling and you were trying to recover, and if I'm not mistaken, you just woke up from an overdue nap.
Yeah, I did. I'm just tired. Yeah, so forgive me for sounding a lot very dull.
No, you sound good, man. Let's start at the top. Final round. You surprised a lot of people in Street Fighter V. Should
Yes.
people have been surprised, or are you kind of sitting there saying, I'm SonicFox, what'd you expect?
Oh wait, hold on. My mother just walked in the room because I'm doing an interview. Look out, please.
He could say hi. Hey, what's up, Chris?
No, Quickly just left. That's one of the best DOA players. But anyways, I was actually surprised at my own performance at Street Fighter V at Final Round. I actually didn't even expect him break top 32, let alone make top 8. I do know it is a huge wake-up call for a lot of the Capcom fan, boys out there. So, you know, it's like there's a lot of like self-doubt that an NRS player can never make top 8 at a tournament. And not only did I do that, I ended up outplacing almost all the top American SF5 players and placed for some of the international players. So I was really, really proud of my performance.
And I think part of the story there is that you use Fong, and there's two sides to that argument. I think no one denies that you're obviously an amazing fighting game player. Some people say that Fong gimmicked your way through the tournament. Some people say that he's clearly the worst character in the game, so obviously you're even better. And I just was wondering your input on that front.
Well, there were like a couple of gimmicks I used on some people, but only because I knew they didn't know how to deal with it. But like against people like Knuckle Dew and like Julio, who I felt learned how to play the matchup with Frank. There's a lot of real setups that he has. So like real like left right 50-50s that he, really bad situations he can put you in if you let him. He's like. He's a difficult, like, as even some of the international players are saying about Fang. He's like a very, very difficult character to use, but in the right hands, he can be really, really, really cheap. So when people say he's like the worst character in the game, I disagree. I actually don't think there's a worse character right now. It's just all about, what playstyle clicks with you. So Fang's essentially a setup character, and that's what archetype I look for in fighting games. And it's like they can typically rush you down zone and have a lot of momentum building. So Fang is one of those characters who can do all kind of sorts, and I really, really enjoy him. So I don't think it's a bad character.
Speaking of momentum building, I just saw you versus Wolfcrone pop up on the screen, and there's definitely a story to be had with that match. I was actually waiting for my stream match while that happened, but I'll let you go into that one.
Explain the story. Okay, so we were playing, right? He goes up one match against me, pretty free. Like the first match I got bodied free. And then it's 1-1, so like he goes up one round and I go up one round, final round. I have the life lead. I'm going ham, getting my setups going. I'm like, yeah, I can hopefully take a match off this guy. And then all of a sudden, the game pauses. But he's the one moving the screen right now. And I'm like, wait, I can't move the screen, so it can't be me. That's my game. That has to be my game. So he's the one that pauses it, and he's moving around, and he like still ends up. He knows that he's doing this too, but he still ends up saying, "Oh, I was the one that had done it." And then they misread it, so they thought that I paused it by how the name Shin Blanca Final Round had popped up at the top left. But that reason why that name popped up was because it says I can change the PS screen whenever I want to, not because I was the one that paused it. So because they misread it, they gave him the game, and so he won the match and got off. And I was like, wait, that makes no sense. I wasn't the one that paused it. So I requested to see the replay, and lucky for me paying attention to my profile I was using, the Shin Blanca Final Round account was using a Street Fighter V background. The User 1 background was using a straight blank blue background. So when I had pointed that out, now like I'm sitting in this seat, and as you can see, I proved it to him too that I'm using a Street Fighter V background, and that user one is using a blank blue background. And what showed up in the replay was a blank blue background. All of the things I said about what had happened right when the event occurred was held true. Like I said, I couldn't move, and there's a reason why, because it wasn't me that paused it. It was actually Wolfcone, and Wolfcone was the one moving it.
And now you think this was foul play? You think he did this on purpose, or how do you?
I don't think he did it on purpose, because there's apparently something happening with the circuit. There's no way to 100% be sure. Like Geo1 did say something about it, but like I said, there's no way to be 100% sure. So we just ended up having the PS4 switched out just in case. But at the end of the day, it did happen under his profile, not mine. So like that's just like essentially the rules of the game. Like you. And
then you played to correct this. You played the last match off of the stream. Yeah.
So I ended up taking it. I was really mad too, because the guy up there kept yelling at me, telling me that was my fault. I mean, he apologized later because he didn't know. But it was like I don't know if I forgave him. But like I was getting really tight about that. But. Yeah, he essentially we played our final match off stream, and like I was a little salty when he told me like I knew I was the one moving it, but I didn't want to claim it for myself. I'm like, man, that's like I see why you did that, but it's still like I don't like how you did that. Like if that was me, I would 100% owned up that I was the one that had paused it. Like even if it wasn't entirely your fault that it happened, because it's nobody's fault. Who would ever want to on purpose hit the PSN button? But if it comes under your account and not mine, that's just. It is what it is. It's your loss. So I ended up playing the last match off stream, final round. It goes down to the final round, and I ended up beating him and taking it out. So
I think the moral of the story here is that clearly there needs to be, and this has been said before, that there needs to be a set rule on exactly how this goes down, and a set way to determine exactly who paused the game. And thankfully, SonicFox was on the case.
Yeah, I proved because I'm always 100% willing to own up to me pausing it. But I'm like, it's very, very, very hard to hit the PSN button on a PS4 controller. I'm just saying. So, especially with somebody just playing D-pad, like, it's just, there's no way you should ever hit the PSN button even by accident on PS4. So, maybe on PS3 is more likely, but not PS4.
So I did want to also talk to you about, of course, Mortal Kombat XL and your match against Tokido. But before we get to that, the idea, you mentioned that the guy was yelling at you. He later apologized. And, final round, whether it deserves it or not, the consensus is that it did kind of deserve some of the bad press it's getting. Mm-hmm. How do you feel? I mean, again, this is .esports, right? You're on an esports show. We're going esports. Are we ready for, not prime time, but premiere time? What do you think is happening and what might need to happen going forward with respects to legitimizing this?
What happened with the events that occurred at final round?
Well, this is the thing. I was watching it at home, and I thought, in several instances, this is not going well. You see the reports, overcrowded, people didn't know where their pools were going to be, a litany of complaints.
Yeah, okay, so... Oh, let me mute that real quick.
Would you get the phone?
Everybody's just sitting distracting me. So, essentially, like, I don't really have a problem with overcrowding. I don't know who would complain about that. That wasn't really too much of a problem. But I think the main problem was how the technical difficulties of how pools were run messed everybody up. Because what occurred was the website kind of went down when everyone wanted to see their bracket. So nobody knew what their pools were, and then nobody could find out what they were. So a lot of people missed their pools. And I really felt that because of that, there should have been like new pool assignments for all those people that got DQ'd because of not knowing. So, and I find it very unfair that the players who couldn't play, like such one of my really good friends, DJT, couldn't play Street Fighter V, and he really wanted to show off his birdie, which is really good, may I add. So it sucked, but I think that if something like that ever were to happen again, there should just be like a brand new, like the bracket should be redone and everybody should be forgiven. But like you're just gonna have to keep the venue up as late as possible in order to make sure everybody gets their fair share of the money. Because like a lot of people came out from all around the world just to miss their pool because of the brackets going down, which is not fair to anyone.
So I mean that's one of the things. The other thing that I want to mention, and this is ties in immediately with the fact that there was over 1,000 entrants to Street Fighter V, is that and this is certainly not your fault, but the top 8 matches were held up for a little bit because we were waiting for you to finish your Mortal Kombat XL pools. do these tournaments, and this has been floated before on this show, this idea, do these tournaments need to be single game tournaments? Or is that a terrible idea? And I want to remind the audience that in a few moments, we're going to open up the phone lines and take a couple of questions for SonicFox. But first, your take on that. Should tournaments be single game only?
I think that's a terrible idea. However, I believe every single tournament should have its own 2-hour span in between. No tournament like how MKX and SF5, no tournament like that should be starting at the same time, especially with how big those games are. Like that's just doesn't make no sense. You shouldn't be having 2 top 8s start at the exact same time. It just doesn't work out well. Even if things are being delayed, it's still it is what it is at the end of the day, because you can't really DQ a player for being good, you know?
Exactly.
So that's really hard to touch on. And honestly, at the end, you're just gonna have to wait. That's just my opinion on it, but I guess it's easy for me to talk about it because I'm the one doing that.
Well, let's talk about some of the other things you were doing, like winning the MKXL tournament. There's a couple of topics here that you and Donka were talking about prior to going live, but let's start here. Grand Finals, Team Kill, you versus your teammate Dragon, both using Alien, although different variations. The topic of letting these characters be tournament legal. Shin Blanca said the community wants them, so we're going to do it.
Although originally they were not going to be allowed, from what I understand.
Yeah.
But yet again, I'll let Dominic tell a story.
Yeah, why don't you fill in the blanks there for us?
Yeah, so I'll tell the whole story about it. So essentially, when I found out, this was at what was it? Was it KIT? No, or it was Winter Brawl. It was Winter Brawl. So I found out that the DLC weren't going to be allowed, and I kind of went on a Twitter rant about how Mortal Kombat XL is a brand new game from opposed to Mortal Kombat X, new mechanics, new balance changes across every character, variations are going to come out that you've never seen before, and everybody has a fair advantage for the new DLC characters too.
So would you call this comparable to banning Hugo or Poison from Ultra Street Fighter 4 the week it came out? Okay.
Yes. So I'm it's a brand new game. So I'm why would you ban all the characters? Everybody has an equal playing field, and we have about 3 weeks to learn how to play the DLC characters. So what's I don't understand what's the disadvantage here to somebody who doesn't when we can all play the characters at the same time. So some of the arguments came up saying that they could be broken. I'm if there's a probable cause for the DLC character to be broken, then we'll nerf them. Not nerf them, ban them accordingly, or ban something about them accordingly, or that said variation. But there was nothing probable with probable cause to ban the DLC. Now, I believe Alien is one of the best, if not the best, character in the game. But it's not like he's broken. He has access to so many tools. So he's a really, really, really strong character. But one of the things that came up was Ed Boon, literally the week of, started talking about it, saying there it takes about 3 weeks. He was saying 3 weeks isn't enough time for you to let DLC rock at a tournament. I'm Ed, you're not a competitor, man. You're I didn't understand. I learned how to play all the DLC in 1 week, and just because I'm SonicFox doesn't mean anything. I just put in the time to learn how to fight all the DLC. There have been many games in the background or before who literally had about 4 days before final round to learn, such as DOA Ultimate, where I don't think we only had a week to learn how to fight all the new characters and adjust to the new balance changes and new mechanics. So I'm why can't the MKX community do that? But I don't blame them, because it's the first time they're ever seeing a new version of the game like this. So not no Game of the Year edition where it's just all the content put into one. No, it's actually a new version of the game, which is something people aren't understanding. So the banned characters that are are brand new in a brand new game makes absolutely no sense, because at the end of the day, it's a brand new game. So
Exactly. Speaking of balance, I already asked about this a little bit, but there's been various issues with regards to Mortal Kombat getting balance patches too quick, getting balance patches that were wrong, and it's become somewhat of a joke in the community that this, or maybe not a joke, maybe it's the truth, I don't know, that there is a single person behind a lot of this balance testing named Paco Stevens, and I was wondering if you could comment on that, his role, and your opinion.
Well, I'm not sure if he's the only one, but I do know he is a huge, whatever he says goes, I think. So, let's just say I disagree with a lot. It's not even the frequency of patches that's the problem. I just generally disagree with how he goes about nerfing, what's going through his mind when he goes about nerfing characters. how does he let certain things like alien pass? I don't even know anymore. I'm just gonna plead the fifth of what I think about his balancing. So, because I don't, that's my opinion. And I know how much weight my opinion carries. So I'm just gonna plead the fifth on that one. I think he's a really swell guy, but man, we'll just plead the fifth on that one.
But is it fair that professional players are at the mercy of what may or may not come down the pipe? I mean, you guys are making a career out of this, and again, you might not know tomorrow your character might not work anymore.
Yeah, I think it's 100% fair because at the end of the day, it's their game and not ours. Whatever they want to do, they can do it. And who are we to say to stop them? At the end of the day, they're more for business, not competitive.
Sure.
So, I was really annoyed when certain characters kept getting nerfed, and of my characters that I played kept getting nerfed without probable cause. They would nerf the wrong things. He would nerf the wrong things about each character. He would nerf things that nobody was complaining about, but he just nerfed just to nerf it. And I was like, what? But like I said, those are details that I'd rather not get into.
Fair enough.
I would start ranting really badly, then I'd make him look like a bad guy, which is not. I'm very grateful for what he's done. So
absolutely. Well, we'll leave it at that. I'm going to change the topics for you while we wait for calls to come in. I want to remind people that we're going to take at least 2 calls because we do have to let SonicFox. He told us you have this much time, and we're taking advantage of it. But we have our next guest lined up here pretty soon. So call in if you want to ask a question. We're going to take 2 questions. And while we wait for those calls to come in, Dominic, Tokido knocked you out. But it also was revealed that the Japanese players heard that you were playing Fong and started to train specifically against you.
Yeah.
I don't know if that is insulting, an honor, the coolest thing that's ever happened, a complete shock. How do you feel about that?
I think it's an honor, actually, to have an international player, especially at the level of Tokido and, say, Infiltration in them, to sit out there and host, a whole Topanga special for about 2 hours straight just to learn how to fight Fang because of what I done at Winter Brawl is, amazing. So, I felt really honored to, realize that, people, how, the grind is real there, I'd love to, go down to Japan when they just grind out different matchups as Fang, but I mean, sadly, still in high school. So, but I was very, very honored, and I was really, really happy to see that happen. So I had absolutely no reason to be salty that I lost. I was not expecting to make it as far as I did in SF5 anyway. So my main number one goal there was to just make top 8 because I knew I wasn't at the level to win the whole tournament yet, but I plan on changing that very relatively soon.
All right.
I'd like to mention that I would have loved to have played SonicFox on the show today, but
servers are down.
In a typical Capcom fashion, servers are down right now, so we cannot play.
And another thing that you audience at home did not hear is that when SonicFox signed into this Skype call, you referred to him, hello, second best Fong in the country. How do you feel about that, SonicFox?
Oh, did he say that?
The implication being that Donka is the first, my friend.
I mean, whenever wants his money taken,
So now here comes the stir the pot question. You have played the cream of the crop, arguably, in Street Fighter V. Certainly, you've done that in MKXL. Who's got the harder comp?
Oh well, okay. They're two vastly different games. I'm just saying, I actually don't know, because. Let's look at it this way. Whoever the best, let's just say, for hypothetical reasons, Infiltration is the best SS5 player right now, right? Mm-hmm. And then I'm the best MKX player, right? Mm-hmm. Well, MKXL, I'm going to be more technical about it. That's that's about as high as you can get. At the end of the day, if anybody is to cross games, that person is going to be a main problem for them. So, there's a lot of people that are capable of beating these people too, and at their level. Hence, all the international players are where they were at with Infiltration. So, they're hard in their own regard, but the level of competition, it's hard to just describe it because they're two vastly when I say vast tremendously different games. Mm-hmm. So it's really hard to say, but I guess I want to say it's harder to compete in Mortal Kombat X because you don't know who you're gonna. First of all, you don't know who you're gonna run into. And you can make the exact same argument for Street Fighter, but what you have to like the mindset you have to go through with Mortal Kombat X is like nothing of the sort with the mindset you have to go into playing SF5. It's kind of like, wow, I got knocked down once in Mortal Kombat X. I could die right here. Because of the amount of 50-50s and damage and like pressure for that game, it's like you could die so quickly. Street Fighter 5 is like more of like a defensive and neutral game. Mortal Kombat X is a neutral game in that sense too, but what the difference between those two games is that Mortal Kombat X rewards offenser, and in Street Fighter it's typically like the defensive play means like you're really, really good. The more and more you block in Mortal Kombat X, like you will die. Like if you keep blocking, you can't sit there and keep blocking forever. You have to keep committing, no matter how much you like it. And Street Fighter, it's like you don't like. I like Street Fighter 5 because you have to commit more rather than Street Fighter 4. So, but like, it's okay to block. You know, it's like it's okay to just chill out. But like. And that's not okay in Mortal Kombat X because you could die so quickly. I mean, it's not a little biased here, but like that's just like the way you could die. Like I lost my first top 8 match in Mortal Kombat XL to literally like a Kodokan player that just kept the offense on me. Like I just couldn't get him off me, and I just died like so quickly too. So it's very, very scary what could happen.
So you're obviously a fan of both games. You said they're very different. You've now won a lot of money playing Mortal Kombat X. You won the first Mortal Kombat XL tournament, and while balancing both these games, you got top 8 in Street Fighter 5. Is there a point where one game is going to take priority in the near coming future? And I know you said Skullgirls is your favorite game. So with that in mind, are you just going to keep playing everything at the same level? Is there a game that's going to take all your time? Are you free to win every Mortal Kombat X tournament without practicing for the rest of your life?
Well,
what is going on?
Yeah, it all depends on how I feel I'll do in that circuit or, competitive scene. So, like, I feel like I'll do okay at best at SF5, but I'm not entirely sure if I'll ever be good enough to win an entire major or rather Capcom Cup. Well, I won't know until I either make it there or, win a major. But for now, Mortal Kombat X has my main priority. But SF5 is very, very close. SF5 is super close. Like I don't want to just set down MKX because it's one of those games. If you set down, people will start getting better. They'll start finding tech. They'll kill you. So like they'll find things that are super dumb. You have to be ready for. But Street Fighter 5, like I said, it's more of like for me, it's more like a neutral game. So like sure, there'll be a lot of tech that will be found, but like at the end of the day, there'll like it's like similar to how when I used to play Unil. You could like not play that game for like 2 weeks and then come back to it, like brush off some of your combos, remember how to play neutral a little bit, and then be good as new within like 10 minutes of just starting up the game because it rewards the better player at the end of the day. And Street Fighter 5 does reward the better player at the end of the day. I'm not saying that Mortal Kombat X doesn't do that in the same regard. It's just that like, man, because of the 50-50s in the game, like anybody who has a better rock paper scissors shoot game than you, if you like, the only way to know who's better at Mortal Kombat X is whoever has the better neutral, and that's it. But you can get really destroyed in Mortal Kombat X if things go wrong.
Dominic, question.
Yes.
Last week we had Infiltration on, and then he won final round. Are you going to NorCal Regionals?
No, I'm not going to NorCal.
Oof, you blew it, man. You would have won, man. That's what happens when you come on best of 3.
It's a ritual.
No desire to go to NorCal Regionals? I mean, it's a premier tournament.
I do want to go there, but school's more important right now.
That makes sense. And we did have a question in the chat that I want to get to since we unfortunately did not get any calls in for you. I guess people are just too scared to ask the question.
Or it's because we started 30 minutes early.
That might have something to do with it, but we do have a good amount of people in the chat. But the question was this. Has Lupe Fiasco reached out to you based off of the stuff you were saying on Twitter?
I mean, I kind of called him out and said, hey, let's play Mortal Kombat. Like, see me in Mortal Kombat X. And he's like, Street Fighter is a game for Mortal Kombat X, which I found very, very rude to say because that is absolutely not true, 100% not true. There are certain people who will only be good, really, really good at Street Fighter, but won't be anything in Mortal Kombat X. And the converse is also just as true. They just both take completely different mindsets to play. So, like, I'm at this point where I don't really care what he says because like I typically like if I know I can beat somebody and then like they start like saying a lot of dumb stuff, I'm just like, okay, like whatever. Like I just let them keep saying dumb stuff. I don't like I've lost the desire. Now if it was just like competitive, like, excuse my French, if it was just like, friendly trash talking or shit talking, it would be fine. But like he kind of blew up a whole community.
Sure.
And called a whole community kind of bad.
Yeah,
like,
I mean, you can make the argument that he didn't realize he was doing that. He didn't realize that he was touching a nerve. But yeah, it definitely was very disparaging what he said about the MK community.
I was just like, you can't say that about the MK community because now you're just shitting on a whole community that's worked like hours, putting countless hours to get really good at this game. If what you say Street Fighter is a game for people who can't play Mortal Kombat X, then why aren't these Street Fighter players dominating in Mortal Kombat X? Like, what?
Yeah.
Makes absolutely no sense. I hate when people do that too. Oh, you play Mortal Kombat X, you'll never be good. Like, that's just an easier game. No, it is not. Holy crap, the way you can die in that game is so ridiculous.
You're right. It's only true about Marvel players.
Anyway, Dominic, we want to thank you very much. Where can people see you next? What's your next tournament?
I might be at Combo Breaker. Yeah, most likely. Well, I actually booked the room today.
Okay, right on.
Combo Breaker.
Anything else you want to say before we let you go? Because we have coming up next John Choi, and we don't want to keep him waiting too long.
I don't know.
Shout outs to...
I mean, shout outs to, like, even though I dislike how the organization of how the pool started with final round, after that, when all that was over, like, it was a relatively really good event, like, after that. But, beforehand, like, yeah, things got a little shaky. But I do want to give a shout out to, like, Larry for, having us all there, even though a lot of things didn't happen well. Shout out to, obviously, CR. All the furries out there too that were supporting. I know you guys saw that Frosty Bunny guy who kind of blew up.
Yeah, he was all over social media, man. It was crazy.
Yeah, I know. It was so funny. Shout out to all my friends that, are always there to support me. And yeah, like, that's really it. I mean, people know where to find me. I'll be messing around. I am actually learning how to play Pokken. So.
Oh, dang. Yeah, we'll talk about Pokken in a second.
See me in that game.
Yeah, I'll mop you with bricks and going. I will be getting super competitive into Pokken because I really like the game so far.
Dang. So. And because there's, as we've been hearing, a ton of money in the tournament scene for the game, for the tournaments that'll have it.
So it's time. So.
Absolutely. Well, SonicFox, again, thank you so much. We look forward to having you back on maybe after you win one of these events.
Yeah, hopefully I will. Yeah.
All right, man. Thanks again.
No problem, man.
You heard it here. Shout-outs to the furries, said from his mouth. He was.
I think that's cool.
Absolutely.
I think a lot of the rhetoric on SonicFox early on was that he was a furry and he's a fighting game player, and that's true, and he totally acknowledges that. But I mean, he's just another guy, and he's pretty fun to talk to on the show. So.
He's kicking ass too, dude. It's just incredible. I mean, you and you were actually there. I was at home, and I was texting you like, "What is this guy doing?" You actually had some choice things to say about his.
I don't have choice things to say about his play. I have choice things to say about the play against him, which he acknowledged totally.
Okay.
And obviously, he's an extremely skilled player, and I personally dropped Fong as a result of the fact that I didn't think he's real. He showed me a lot of stuff I didn't know. But I do think there's a lot of work to be done in fighting him, and you saw Tokido do a lot of it.
So it was people not prepared for Fong, or him just having a really good Fong?
He has a godlike Fong, and people weren't prepared for Fong. So I think it mixed together and got him a really good result that he probably would have come close to or gotten anyway.
When I was seeing his Fong, I was thinking of his Aaron Black. That constant pressure right up on him, and then backing up and doing some dirty stuff.
The difficult part about playing Fong is obviously you have a lot of highly punishable, high recovery moves and no reversals, and basically just very poor defense in general. So maneuvering him is very difficult, and he did a great job with that.
Well, we wait for Mr. John Choi. Okay, he's there. John Choi, tournament organizer for North Carolina. How you doing, man? Thank you so much for joining us.
Good. Thank you for having me.
Hey, how are you doing, man?
All right. How about you guys?
We're doing fine. Thank you so much. I mean, you explained to me that because you're currently at work, the only thing you could do is a phone call, and we appreciate you taking the time, especially considering you have a premier tournament that you're organizing that'll happen in less than 1 week. How is preparation going so far?
So far, I think everything is falling into place. I believe we're ready to go with the event. There hasn't been too many hiccups so far, but as you probably know, big events like this, there's always something that comes up at the last minute. So we'll see what kind of fires we have to put out. But so far, so good. I think we're ready.
So we have several questions that we want to get through. Of course, we're following the Capcom Pro Tour, and that's why we're happy to have you on. We might as well, so that we can get it out of the way, talk about the big one, which is I asked you how you felt about Larry Dixon, Shin Blanca, and how the way Final Round was run, if it was fair that he was getting that negative press.
From other TOs, nonetheless.
From other TOs, like Jay Bailey has come out and said it, and a lot of people. And there's a really thorough SRK article that came out today. There's also our own Steve Jurek wrote about it. Why is such a reaction being elicited from this? And I have my own theories, but do you think it's fair that he's getting this negative press?
Well, I mean, first of all, I've actually have not been to Final Round, so I have no personal experience on how the event is run. So pretty much all the information I have is all hearsay. Mm-hmm. But I will say that just as a tournament organizer from that point of view, that big events like this is really difficult to manage on all kinds of levels logistically. And I think the big thing is that since Final Round is the first event of the tour, when we have a brand new game that is so far very, very popular, it's going to run into more troubles than some of the other events that have more time to adjust to the new community's changes. So I don't think, Larry or other people expected, 1,000 players to show up. And I also think he didn't expect there would be so many on-site registrations. So things like that is definitely difficult to prepare for and could, throw a loop. So I will say that, I think people should try to understand that aspect of it and the fact that it was a very first major event with this game. So there's bound to be some hiccups. The same thing happened when Street Fighter 4 launched and turned out to be really, really popular beyond all imagination. Mm-hmm. All the events were kind of scrambling to adjust to the new settings. So I think, it's kind of the similar steps here. So, just take that and, it's a tough thing to do. So aside from that, I mean, all events, no matter what, there's always ways to improve it. There's always things to better prepare for, and that's why we do this thing. I mean, I've been running NCR for about 15 years, and every year we run into issues, and we learn from it. So I think this will just be a learning experience.
Well, then I have two questions for you. One, how many entrants do you have for Street Fighter V so far?
So we have about 400 or so, and typically we get about 50 to 60 on-site registrations, but I've had a lot of email requests from people that missed the registration deadline or asking about on-site registration. So I think we'll go over 100 easy. So we may have a 600-700 man tournament, which is, basically double what Street Fighter 4 was last year. So I did try to kind of prepare for this by, getting more systems ready than last year, but I didn't get double the amount of setups, mainly because the venue is still the same. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of hard to change. I mean, I locked down this venue with the contract 1 year ago, as soon as NCR ended. So, a year later, now that we know Street Fighter is really popular, it's impossible to change the venue to get more space. So I think that was some of the complaints I heard from people about Final Round, that, the space wasn't that big enough. But, you got to think about that aspect. He didn't just lock in that venue a couple of weeks ago. I'm sure it was done a long time ago, and that's really something hard to change at the last minute.
Mm-hmm. So seeing one question I have based on that is that seeing Final Round go from 800 some, I believe, when Larry was on the show, to the cap of 1,024, and then seeing the negative effect it had on pools. I mean, they basically totally swapped around and changed completely, not only the night before, but then again the day of the tournament. Why do you feel that late registration should still be allowed, is my question.
So I think it's two main reasons. One is that for a variety of reasons, people just have difficulty registering online. I've had several contacts where people say that they do not have PayPal. I've also had somebody from Vietnam trying to register, but their PayPal IP address was blocked because it's from Vietnam, so they couldn't pay with that. And so there could be a variety of reasons why they're unable to register online. So I think for that instances, I think we should kind of keep the on-site registrations intact. Mm-hmm. There's also the flip end of it. It does bring in extra revenue for the organizers to, put on their better production. So I think those are the two big reasons. But with that, I mean, on-site, since it's so last minute, it does throw a wrench in things. So I think there needs to be some measures taken to kind of mitigate those side effects. And that's kind of exactly what I've done this year with the introduction of the death pool method. Because last year there was a little bit of a fiasco where we had a seeded player show up and do late registration, and that kind of threw a wrench in things. So I thought about it over the last year, and I think that it's best that once polls and brackets are published, that it does not change at all. So if you notice, I published the brackets earlier in the week, soon as online registration closed, and that has not changed at all, and it will not change. I've just allotted one open bracket for all on-site people to join in so that it will not impact any other people in the tournament.
John,
and judging how,
go ahead.
there's so many on-site registrations for final round, if it turns out that we have like hundreds of people showing up, then I may place a cap on it as well. I have to, weigh the pros and cons of that because we do have limited resources. So I do want to make it an enjoyable tournament for all. So if I see too many people, then I might just cap it off.
So I had a question for you about, before we get into more specifics of the tournament, this idea, the backlash, right? The negative press, the heated emotions, is it because there's an element of people are watching, you're messing this up for the rest of us, not to continue to shit on Shin Blanca, but that sentiment, it's like, hey guys, we're all in this together. And does that help or hurt? I mean, do we need Capcom to come in and run the whole thing? They tried that with the 25th anniversary tournament series and then decided not to do that anymore. But your thoughts on that we're all in this together and we should potentially reach out to each other, or your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, I do think that it does benefit the community as a whole if we're able to resolve things on our own. We do not need Capcom or anybody else to kind of step in. This community has grown from grassroots events, and it should remain that way. It could definitely get bigger production, but we don't need a third party to just come in to control the entire thing. Mm-hmm. I think that's what makes the events unique. Every major has something special and unique about them, and so I think we need to preserve that. So with that in mind, I think it is definitely, criticism is definitely welcome. At least for me it is. But keep it constructive and, first maybe try to resolve it internally. It's probably, what I would recommend. And then if that doesn't work, then, you could bring it to bigger avenues. I mean, this is pretty much standard fare at a corporate, setting. It's, you try to resolve things with your peers internally, quietly, and then if that doesn't work, then you could bring it up to the escalation level. Mm-hmm. But, that being said, not everybody sees it that way. Some people just escalate immediately to try to get some results. So that's just their, personal preference. But I think, we should try to kind of resolve it on our own first before maybe getting it all out there.
Now, a question about, you've been in this game for a long time, since you've been competing. You're one of the legendary, since ST days, if I'm not mistaken. I remember in EVO not too many years ago where you took out Daigo off stream and people couldn't believe it. You've been in the competitive scene for a very long time. How do you feel about final round coming around and the Asians contingent taking it from the Americans? Is that ever going to change?
Oh, I definitely think, it could change. I think it's just, historically, the Japanese players have been very strong in Street Fighter, and I think there's a lot of reasons for that. And then now, with infiltration stepping into the scene, I think Asians in general have shown a lot of dominance over the years. And I think a lot of that has to actually do with maybe the concentration and the size of the country. So we have a very big player base, but the big drawback that we have is we're very spread out. We have great players on the East Coast, great players on the West Coast, but they don't get to meet each other and practice as often as I think they would want to. And online is, not the best since we're so far apart. I remember seeing some online games that people are doing while I was in Korea and Japan, and it's almost like you're right next to them. It's basically like offline. So Wow. They benefit that they have a lot better broadband connection than us. And just because the physical space is short, the distance is shorter, they're able to enjoy a much better experience. So I think that is a big plus to them. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they will continue to win. I think it just goes with the popularity in each area. We pretty much dominate in the Marvel games because that is really popular here. And, other games like anime games are more popular in Japan, so they traditionally dominate. So I think, it doesn't necessarily, you don't necessarily have to be Asian or anything. It's just, I think there just happens to be a lot of players that are interested that maybe come from that background.
We have a call for you, actually, John. Are you ready to take a call?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, we have a call from Dan. Dan, you're on the air. Do you have a question for John Choi?
Yeah, I just wanted your opinion, John, about the recent debate that's going on about Arturo's tweet regarding sharing tech and hiding tech. Essentially, this all stems from the fact that it's been very frustrating that the U.S. hasn't been able to win like a major that has international competition in. So the Japanese seem to kind of have this really cooperative approach where they seem to be sharing a lot of tech, whereas Arturo seems convinced that hiding tech and, I don't know, like forming power clicks, I guess, is the way to go to beat Japan finally. So I kind of wanted your input on that.
Yeah, I think a lot of that actually has its roots in our cultural differences. Japan mentality is really big on team efforts. Everything they do, they think about teams. Whereas I think the U.S., its culture is based on, independence and just kind of every man for himself. So I think that's also reflected in, our Street Fighter like strategy. Where I'm sure you heard Alex Vai talk about, back in the day, save that shit for nationals, where we would kind of hide the tech and try to win the big events. And with the advent of the internet, I think that's kind of gone away a little bit. But there's definitely people still kind of holding out on their top tactics because they are very competitive. They want to win these tournaments for themselves, and I think it's mainly a culture thing. If we could kind of get past that and try to be more co-op, I think we'll definitely see some success. But again, kind of talking about the broadband stuff, U.S. is very, very spread out. It's kind of hard to get everybody under one roof, and trying to learn co-op is a little bit difficult. I mean, I remember seeing Daigo stream, the last few times, and he has all the top players in the same room, and they're testing stuff out live and trying things out. If we wanted to get, all the top players in the U.S. in the same room to do that, that's, not as feasible because, they're just kind of spread apart. So I definitely do welcome the idea of the co-op, but because of, cultural and just physical differences in the countries, I think it's a little bit harder to come by.
Thank you for your call, Dan. That was a good, illuminating topic. We have a couple more questions for you here for our interview. And basically, I wanted to ask you, will you have an Alex reveal trailer at NorCal Regionals?
If we did, I could not talk about that due to my NDA.
Okay, well, do you feel like you may or may not have dodged a bullet that you don't have Alex available for you before this tournament? Because I can only imagine that would wreak havoc. You saw in the MKX tournament that we were just talking to SonicFox, it was Aliens in grand finals. How do you feel about the fact that Alex is not there yet, and how tournament organizers should handle that going forward?
So that's pretty straightforward. CPT actually implemented a rule exactly about this very topic, and they put in a rule that a new character must be out for over a week before it is allowed for tournament use. So they made it really clear cut. I know a week, maybe too short, but they had to set, the guideline somewhere. So
sure.
Seeing how the NCR is, only a few days away and Alex is not out yet, even if he were to come out in the next few days, he would be banned from NCR. So I'm definitely dodging the bullet there. But definitely, yeah, that's the rule that CPT is using, that the character must be out for at least a week. And, you guys, that's up for debate whether that's a long enough time period. But, yeah, that's where we're at.
Are you using Smash GG or Challenge?
I am using Challenge.
Okay. And one final question I have for you, because I don't think we have any more calls, and that is, you're on the Capcom Pro Tour. It's a place of prominence. You want to be there as a tournament organizer. You're a premier tournament, even more. How do you feel about having two American premieres back-to-back at the beginning of the season? Does that change the way the season will shake out? Is that a good thing, a bad thing? Your thoughts?
Ideally, I would like to see the events kind of spread out more. It makes everything easier, especially, the lifeblood of the events, which are the players. It's definitely easier to plan travel if it's not consecutive, back-to-back tournaments. And typically for the last several years, it actually has been, several weeks different between final round and NCR. Unfortunately, just because of the venue that we're running it in the capital of California, and all the weekends were booked except for Easter weekend, simply because, there's a lot of political officers that work here, and that's the weekend that seems to be free. And for some reason, Easter fell in March this year. Typically, it's in April, and so NCR got kind of moved up a couple of weeks and came right at the heels of the final round. So was an unfortunate timing. Next year, if it's back on Easter again, it'll be back in April, which I prefer. So ideally, I want to see at least a few weeks between all of the majors to kind of give, people some time to breathe in between the events.
That makes sense. John, is there anything we didn't ask you about that you want to mention? Obviously, the stream will be this weekend on Capcom Fighters, presumably.
Of course, why people should go, cool restaurants around the venue, that sort of thing.
Yeah, what can you tell us for the fans, the people who will be there?
Nothing much different other than the new stadiums. The King Stadium got built, so there's a lot of new businesses popping up. Unfortunately, I heard they're still kind of constructing a lot of the new businesses and bars, so not quite ready yet. But if we were to return next year, there should be a brand new downtown area with lots of new places, so I think that'll be a good time. And then I think just in closing, just about all this tournament stuff, it's a lot of work. People do it, it takes a lot of time, and so I think, just kind of think about that when you try to kind of think about the other events, and, kind of what Larry's kind of going through.
And Donka was reminding me before the show that you, I guess you could say, made history when you revealed your spreadsheets. This is what it takes. This is how much we spent, how much came back in. You made that very transparent. In retrospect, was that a good idea? Did that work out for you?
Yeah, it did not do anything negative. Personally, all these events, they're run by individual people, and that's basically your personal finances. So it's like revealing how much money you're making, which is totally private information, and I do not think that is required from anybody at all. It's just that during that time, there was so much drama and fiasco surrounding, how much money the TOs are making. So my friend asked me, hey, can you just tell us, how much you're spending? I was like, yeah, I could totally do that. Like, it did not do anything negative. If anything, I hope it kind of brought to light what some of the costs are. And unfortunately, I live in probably one of the most expensive, if not the most expensive out of all the major regions, which is North Cal. Mm-hmm. And our real estate's really, really expensive. So I think that's another big reason why NCR wasn't able to grow as much as some of the other events, simply because I just can't afford it.
I hear you.
The housing market here is really expensive, and so I'm not able to get a mega-sized venue. But hopefully the housing market kind of balances out a little bit, and then I'll be able to get a bigger venue and try to grow the event a little bit bigger.
That's perfect. Well, good luck with that. Good luck with the remaining planning that you might have going on here from NorCal Regionals. We look forward to the event. And again, thank you so much for coming on the show and giving us some of your time.
Thank you for having me on. Have a good one.
All right. Later, John. I'm looking forward to it. I was very excited. Even with all the hiccups, man, the stream was hype. There were some great matches that were played.
We're talking about that final round?
That final round.
Oh, yeah?
So I'm ready for more. I'm ready for NorCal Regionals. I can't wait.
Definitely. No one's problem with final round was Street Fighter V. The game did wonderfully in its first American and first premier event, and I think people want to see the game to come.
We're going to bring John and Steve on here, and we're going to have call-ins still open so that you guys can give your opinions, because we're going to be talking about final round. But before we get them on, talk to me a little bit about Pokken, man. Did you get a chance to play? They had it there.
I actually didn't.
You said you would, man.
I registered for the tournament. I played Street Fighter V the whole weekend. I played with people. I played money matches. I played tournament. And trust me, playing the tournament took the whole weekend.
Yeah. But, you did see it, at least. What were people saying? Did you get a taste for it
I
at
saw
all?
the game. A couple of my friends played the game. I think it's not the joke that people thought it was, especially after some of the balance. Goichi from Japan, who obviously had some sort of access to the game, living in a place where it was out in arcades, won. I couldn't tell you enough specifically. I know it has sort of a rock, paper, scissors system going on, but every fighting game does, at least in some way.
Well, we'll be sure to test that out, hopefully on the show at some point.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to playing it. I registered for 2 games at EVO, SF5 and Pokken. So I'll at least play it once.
There you go, man. All right. So I want to remind everybody, we do have the lines open. We're going to be talking about Final Round. We're going to talk about Capcom Pro Tour with our illustrious panel, Ace King Offsuit, also known as Steve Jurek, and John Velociraptor Guerrero. Hey, guys. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, what's going on, guys?
Hey, you're looking at an extra crisp HD, man. Is that the that's not your usual backdrop? In fact, what's that behind you, man?
Oh, well, we'll take a second to do this then. I'm currently in Miami visiting a friend who really never graduated out of college. So I'm in the brightest part of his apartment here, which also happens to be in front of his bar. And he's got his Bill Murray flask and his drinking horn. I don't know if you guys can can see all this. It's pretty. And then there's a painting of a dogs playing poker. So, but yeah, no, it's a really nice apartment. I'm having a good time here in Florida.
Now, is that crushed velvet? That's the big question.
I don't know. I don't know my liquors that well. It doesn't look like anything here is crushed velvet.
All right, guys. Well, let's talk about some Street Fighter and some Capcom Pro Tour. Steve, would you be kind enough to kick us off with some of the results? We now have a shifting around of the standings.
It's been idle for a few weeks because obviously there have been no events, but we had Infiltration, big surprise. He ended up winning the whole thing. He's going to Capcom Cup. He's back. You thought maybe that Americans could do well. This is the moment where the U.S. catches up, and top 4 all Asian. They took our cookies.
A couple Japanese players lost, even in pools, to some American players. I mean, I may have beaten one.
Didn't you get Dagra?
I got Dagra, but he's more of an anime player than the Street Fighter
Whatever.
player.
He
So I'm
took
just
out an
messing
Evo
around.
champ. Guys, I think he wants a little bit of a golf clap. John, can you give this gentleman a golf clap? Steve, you're next. Can we give Donka a? I don't think they're impressed, man.
I wouldn't be either.
All right, guys, we have 2 people on the dais here, our friend Mike Donka Schiller and John Velociraptor Guerrero, who were actually at the event. You guys were on the ground. What was your experience like?
Well, I can rant for a while. I can rant in segmented places. I can kind of try to shorten it, but it'll still be pretty long. But the tournament itself was a lot of fun. I think most people who were there had that experience at the very least. Larry's definitely a good guy and helped me out when I talked to him the few times I did. And a whole lot of amazing Street Fighter players were in one room, and other game players were in one room. There was arcade machines everywhere. Atlanta's cool, all of that. However, my personal opinion, are we talking about things?
Let's go into it. And I know Steve will have something to add to this. But yeah.
My personal opinion is that they tried too many new things at once, despite the very obvious circumstances. There's been a lot of rhetoric that they didn't know there were going to be this many people, but they did cap it at 1,024, and Larry did say on the show that he was quite sure that he was going to reach it and possibly expand past it. And to me, it didn't feel like the tournament was ready for that whatsoever. You had 1,024 entrants for Street Fighter V, and I think the second most games were in the 200s or so, and yet Street Fighter V got just around the same segment of the ballroom as Dead or Alive. I mean, it just didn't really seem to match properly, in my opinion, with the breadth of the information they had beforehand. I think that... Should I keep talking? Well, okay, so I think that running top 128 on Sunday took a bit of the hype away from top 8, as well as made it a little bit harder for competitors to play their best at the same time. We've grown very accustomed to top 8 being on Sunday, or at least top 16 or something like that. It really highlights the matches and allows people to study to make top 8 the best it possibly can, whereas here it felt like an endurance run. And overall, I just think they had the information to make the tournament better than it was.
So they didn't have an excuse, is what you're saying, for the way it turned
out. There are things that go wrong at every event. From what I understand, a lot of volunteers who signed up to help run the event didn't. People who ran the event were all very nice, and I did not have any problem with anyone running it or the job that they did. The problem that I have is that, as I said, they could have been more prepared. And stuff like pools changing the morning of the game is just totally embarrassing, in my opinion. And Larry, to be fair, did call out his mistake. And while a lot of people have said, he's done this a million times, like we shouldn't give him another chance, I definitely will be going to final round again when it happens next year. But now that it's a Capcom Pro Tour Premier event, now that this is this important, it cannot happen again.
John, let's just go down the line. You're up, John.
Okay, so there's obviously been quite a bit of negativity floating around social media and such. People have voiced that they were not happy with the way final round played out. And before I would jump in and say and go as far as to agree with them or anything like that, I took a second to kind of think about this, and I've been thinking about it since during final round. And these guys have been doing this for 19 years. You don't do a tournament that gets as big as final round and goes as long as final round without kind of knowing what's going on. Street Fighter and the FGC in general has been very much on this grassroots approach, a grassroots schedule where you have volunteers coming in. We're all doing it off of our own backs, carrying all the weight, and there's something beautiful and poetic and cool about that. But when you reach these numbers of 1,024 entrants, and then you have to cap your tournament, things start to change. We're not running tournaments out of garages anymore. We're not even being able to fit tournaments inside of ballrooms. There's multiple ballrooms at Final Round, and still we found ourselves with really not enough space. And so I think that I want to just come flat out and say, before we get into all the different details and such, what I feel. And that is that, like Donka, I will be going back to Final Rounds next year. And if all of these things happen with this, with the way Street Fighter V came out and was this brand new explosion of a game, if this repeated itself, then I would have a major problem.
Sure.
But given that this was kind of the first time that we've seen these kind of numbers and such, I can give some slack, some leeway to these guys who were absolutely busting their ass, all losing their voice, all trying as hard as they could to make this whole thing work. And Donka, I think, talked a little bit earlier about not necessarily having as much help as they had projected. I spoke with my tournament organizer, or not my tournament organizer, the bracket runner, and he brought up briefly that like there was something like there was supposed to be like 100 volunteers, and then only 30 ended up showing up. And I don't know that those are the exact numbers, but you get the idea there that a lot of the people that were supposed to be helping run this tournament, making it go smoothly like a well-oiled machine, weren't there. And so when you're running a 1,024-man tournament with just one game, you got to think, well, okay, there's definitely money flowing in, and I think it's time for the FGC to start doing more in the way of actually hiring and paying people. It can be these same people, but getting money involved with the people that are running your tournament for you or helping you out. Because that puts more responsibility on them. That ensures that things like, well, 70% or whatever number it was that didn't show up to Final Round will show up. And that's starting to kind of get away from that grassroots style. I understand that. But, I mean, we're getting into this next echelon, and it's important that these tournaments run smoothly if we're going to continue to have this many people come up and be a part of it. Otherwise, people are not going to show up anymore, and it's going to fall off. So I think this was a learning experience, and I think that all of the other tournaments down the line would do well to take note of what happened here, to look at the numbers, and to say, okay, we're probably going to need to make some adjustments from the traditional approach in these fighting game tournaments in order to make sure that ours run smoothly.
Steve, yeah, you wrote about this. The thing is, and we have Lapchi, famous tournament organizer from Canada, saying we're talking like we're TOs and we don't know shit, basically, right? And there might be something to that. But the idea here is that this is what people saw, this is what people experienced, and I'm not here to tell a TO how to run his job, but I do think it's a prudent decision to listen to what people are saying, and then you can decide whether you take that or not. But Steve, what do you have to add to this?
Well, I was stream monitoring this weekend, so I'm speaking from that perspective. What we saw on the stream was great. You know, the matches were incredible. There was a ton of hype there. Even
the Alex reveal.
I actually did not hate that. I thought that was kind of funny.
No, it wasn't. That was not funny at all.
I totally
Steve.
disagree that it was funny, but we'll go into that later.
They're just so invested in the moment that they can't just step back like, okay, we can't just wait a week for this trailer to come out. Chill. But other than that, I have to say this. There was a chance for me to go this year through you guys. Didn't end up working out. No big deal.
Yeah.
Next year, I really don't have any interest in putting my money, taking time off of work, taking time away from my other responsibilities to go to this event. Because let's be clear, let's be honest. Last year, we had a lot of the same issues with last-minute changes, with schedules not being right, pools not being situated properly. The year before that, we had a lot of the same problems. The year before that, we had a lot of the same problems. This is, it's a tournament that I know everyone there works hard. I'm not trying to shit on anybody's effort. I'm not trying to say anybody doesn't care. But what they have done in the past, it makes it clear that the issues that they faced this year weren't just because of the size. It wasn't like it was a well-oiled machine and then it suddenly tripped up now that they have to deal with a 1,000-man bracket. It's been an ongoing thing for years, and it's just, you know, when you have tournaments that are this size, when you have tournaments with so many people, so many first-time entrants, it's not just a bunch of people hanging out and having a good time anymore. You're selling an experience. You're selling your event to customers. And if you give them a bad experience, they're not going to buy from you again. They're not going to come back. So I think it would be a mistake to try and write all this off as, you know, trying to dump on somebody or just trying to pile on from people who, you know, I haven't run fighting game tournaments before, but, you know, if don't listen to me as a TO, because I'm not. Listen to me as a customer.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
And I completely agree. I mean, with no casual setups anywhere in sight that weren't brought by people themselves, it was, if you weren't seriously there to compete in the tournament as, like, you know, a winner, I really don't feel that it was anything other than a hotel gathering.
Wow.
And I'll be honest with that.
There was also a lot of cool things that happened at Final Round. John, you wrote a piece on how you saw a lot of new tech. Why don't we talk about some of the cool stuff we did see now that we've gotten this, you know, other stuff out of our system?
Yeah, there's, and I'm still trying to wrap my mind around the tech and understand it fully. But I think it was on like Saturday that I started getting like messages from my friends, because I wasn't watching the stream at the time. I was doing something else. But like, hey, tell me about that tech where the Japanese guys are just like jumping back and doing shorts and some kind of a new option select. And so we all kind of saw quite a few of the players doing this new thing, and I guess what it is an option select for your wake up, where you start with down back and you hold that for just a few frames, and that covers anyone trying to do any media attacks. Then you jump back and you hit tech at the same time, and what that does is it'll tech a throw, but the animation for the tech whiff won't come out, the throw whiff won't come out. You'll end up jumping backwards and doing a light kick. And essentially, it guards against media attacks, throw attempts, and then if they don't do anything or they try to shimmy in front of you, you jump back out of danger. That anyone that plays Street Fighter V and knows, you know, how the game kind of works, that's huge. That negates, as the aggressor, a lot of options really quickly. And there are ways around it, but I guess to my understanding, it means you need to attack on like between the 9th and the 11th frame after someone's wake up. So trying to time a move to do that, especially from what we've been practicing since the beginning of Street Fighter V, is really wonky. And so players were doing this and we're like, what's going on here? This is kind of insane, and this is kind of throwing a wrench into how we understand the wake up game of Street Fighter V. So yeah, that's my basic understanding of it thus far.
What did you see out there that you
I
thought?
mean, yeah, this is just that's the fuzzy jump tech that he was talking about. It's definitely been used in other games. It's very applicable, as John said, in Street Fighter V, especially because of the variable wake-ups. It's already hard enough to time medias in the game, and trying to keep into play whether or not they're fuzzy jumping is just so hard. So obviously, it's very good tech. People have debated whether or not it'll still work with regards to the patch that they have announced with the March update. And there's been disagreements in whether or not the English translation was even fully correct, so we'll have to see. I assume it will be still in play. Other tech?
What I'm curious is basically how's the game coming along? Like what's new?
I think it's coming along really cool. I mean, we saw Tokido using jump short, which apparently I know Shady K shouted out is one of the few moves in the game where it's a jumping attack where the hurt box is within the hit box, so he actually can hit you where you basically cannot anti-air him. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, we saw a lot of stuff that definitely not everyone knew about yet, and I think we'll continue to see that for months, but, geez, with 1,024 people like the month the game after came out, I don't know if we'll ever see that much again at once, and it was really pretty exciting to see.
Perhaps Evo, perhaps CO, and other things. Gentlemen, anything else you want to add to the topic?
I was kind of wiling out on Twitter about the event schedule. You know, I know I'm the guy who cares more about that than anybody else does. So me spazzing out about it, you know, doesn't necessarily mean it's a massive deal. But as a viewer, I'd like to think I'm one of the most proactive in seeking that information out.
Sure.
If I can't find that information, that's a problem. That's a problem for the casual guy who just wants to show up, watch some stuff, you know, when he's got some time and take off. You know, why, you know, if the Tekken guys were coming out to stream their own event, why was that not mentioned anywhere until they actually showed up? You know, it's just, you know, it's just a very frustrating weekend for me personally all the way around. I want events to be good. I don't want to pile on for the sake of piling on. I want everyone in this community to have a chance to go to an event, have a great time. Because I want to see this grow. I want to see more people enjoy what I enjoy. So that's why I get heated about those sorts of things.
That was definitely something that was very frustrating. I know, like, as Event Hubs was trying to keep the like, you know, say who was in what pool, give results and stuff, there wasn't very much online in the way of information about what was going on with the tournament. I know myself, we kind of knew what pools we were in, but we didn't know what times those were going to start. Yes, those were very real issues. And you said that essentially your main focus is to make the community better. You want these events to be good, and I absolutely agree with that. But I want to caution people. I want to caution you, internet, to say that doesn't necessarily mean let's not go to final round. Let's not go to the tournaments that these tournament organizers who have ultimately failed in certain areas. Let's just like stop and let's, you know, boycott their event or whatever. I think that's very, very dangerous, considering this, you know, how the FGC is absolutely growing, but like, be very careful how you conduct yourself, the things that you say about these guys, because we are all one community at the end of the day. And a tournament like final round, it's huge, it's massive. And so yes, people are not perfect, they screw up, and yeah, there were problems with final round, absolutely, but I just think about it before you just say I'm not going, and I tell other people not to go and things like that, because that can be very detrimental to our community. I think that we should be constructive and tell these tournament organizers, hey, realistically, these were the problems here, and you need to fix this stuff, but do it in a respectful way, you know, because like I say, we're all a community. So that's all I would have to add to all this.
Yeah, and I agree with that to a point. But I think if you tell people, hey, continue to buy this product, even though it's a bad experience, just because we should, then what purpose should we have to? What reason would they have to improve if they know that they're going to get their money anyway? You know, I'm not advocating anyone boycott. I'm not advocating that at all. I want people to go out to events. I want people to have a good time. I want, you know, final round to do well, just like any other event. But I think that if we give a message that says, hey, you've got our money no matter what, we want you to do this, but even if you don't, we're still going to pay you, that's not a good message. I don't want to see people, you know, say I'm never going again. But I just want the event to be good. I just want every event to be good. So
yeah, I'm gonna change the subject one last time here. I think I said Snake Eyes. Who did you guys have? Did anybody have infiltration to take the tournament? Steve, you're the one that usually keeps track of these things, man. Who did we say?
If you told me before the tournament 3 Americans would make top 8, I might have guessed SonicFox, maybe Brent.
You would have guessed SonicFox? You literally would have thought SonicFox might have.
No, I'm saying SonicFox was maybe. He was the most like. I don't know if I would have picked him, but of the 3 that did make it, he's the guy I would have most likely picked.
Wow.
But Nando, shout outs to that guy.
That guy
did really well.
That was crazy. I loved watching that Armika. Man, that was exciting. And you'll notice that it was the Japanese guys that ended up taking him out. And if I'm not mistaken, from having Football Duck on earlier, he's saying that they know all the grimy stuff over there with Armika, and they were pioneering that first. So they were prepared, I think, for that.
Armika, the Fuerte of Street Fighter V.
Yeah, it feels that way.
Well, Nando played Fuerte in Street Fighter 4.
Oh, there you go.
So, and I've heard that from more than one source at this point. That's not me saying that. I'm not saying that she's, but that's just throw a wrench in the works. Go have at it, internet.
To me, she is, but I don't think that's a bad thing.
Yeah,
different
sure.
styles.
All right, guys. Well, that about brings us to the end of the show, unless we missed anything that you think is relevant to this show. Steve, got anything?
Apologies to Five Gods. That was a great event over the weekend. You just happened to go up against. You picked a bad week to have it. I'm sorry.
That's fair.
But shout outs to all the guys and the shout outs to everybody that was involved with that. That was a great event.
John?
Nope.
Cool. Mike?
You can watch a set I played versus Punko. I think Art posted it up on his Twitter if you want to do that.
Cool.
I don't know.
That's about it, guys. Thank you so much for watching. We started a little bit early this time. We'll be back at our regular hour next week. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.